said Meghan Markle is, of course, a lifelong feminist, which she's demonstrated by marrying a prince and giving up her job.
Turns out Prince Harry and Meghan Markle will still get paid millions of dollars for doing absolutely nothing.
Sir, your millions from Netflix for no one knows what.
Put it with the rest of them.
What?
My brother's fiancée, Miss Meghan Markle, is on the American program Suits.
Yes, Wednesdays, 8 p.m, USA Network.
The only difference between that show and this is people watch this one.
If you had lunch with Meghan Markle, you'd be stunned at how dumb she was. Not because she's black, because I wouldn't think she was black if I looked at her, because she's an actress who was on the show Suits.
And I know some people are disappointed by the name Archie, but there's one person who's super excited, the Queen. Yeah, because you know for the last 9 months, she's been like, please don't be Jamal, please don't be Jamal, please don't be Jamal.
There is one universal rule nobody ever tells you until it's too late. Never, ever make comedians angry. They don't clap back quietly. They don't whisper. They don't issue polite statements. They turn you into material, night after night, joke after joke, millions of viewers at a time. And once that happens, there's no undo button. And Meghan Markle, she handed them everything on a silver platter. The privacy speeches delivered through constant interviews, the victim stories told from behind mansion gates, the cries of being misunderstood while signing Netflix deals and podcast contracts. It was a contradiction so loud that comedians didn't even have to stretch for punchlines. The jokes wrote themselves. Late night hosts smelled it immediately. Podcasts latched on. Animated shows sharpened their knives. And once the comedy world locks onto a target, it doesn't let go. So let's talk about how this started. Because every pile-on has a first shot. And that first shot came from late night television. Jimmy Fallon went straight for the lifestyle branding that turned Meghan into an internet meme overnight. Not with anger, not with rage, with laughter, the most dangerous weapon of all.
Number one question that mystifies scientists.
Is there life on another planet?
Oh no, why does Meghan Markle make her own pretzel bags? They don't know why.
That's interesting. She takes it from one bag and puts it in another bag.
There's another bag.
That's confusing.
What should have been elegant, aspirational content came across as painfully out of touch. The kind of thing that makes regular people pause, blink, and then burst out laughing. Because surely this has to be satire. But it wasn't. And that's what made it legendary for all the wrong reasons. Once that door opened, the internet sprinted through it.
Take the snack out of one bag and then move them into another bag and then label this new bag, even though this bag already has a...
Parodies flooded social media instantly, not just from people who watch late night TV, but from people who had never cared about royal drama at all. The reach exploded. The jokes escaped the original audience and entered the wider culture. That's when it stops being teasing and becomes a reputation problem. Then came the lifestyle performance that pushed things over the edge.
I prepare water for my guests. Some water that I got from the spring in my backyard. Whatever you do, don't use tap water. I'm just gonna sneak a taste. You flower petal. H is always calling water water, and there you have
preparing water with flower petals as if regular tap water was beneath her, treating basic activities like sacred rituals, speaking in that breathy performative seriousness. It was all too polished, too rehearsed, too self-important, and comedians pounced. The jokes weren't random, they were sharp because they were familiar. They pointed at patterns people had already noticed but hadn't quite put into words yet. The humor wasn't just mocking, it was exposing. And the media tour never stopped. After Oprah, after 6 Netflix episodes, after endless headlines, booking yet another interview didn't feel like truth-telling anymore. It felt like attention chasing, and Stephen Colbert clocked it immediately.
Any type of flower arranging is just telling a story. What story do you want to tell? Maybe leave the country. Maybe disown your dad. Be creative with
treating nicknames and initials like sacred secrets, turning nothing into something profound. That exaggerated sense of self-importance became irresistible material. And once the door was open, Trevor Noah walked straight through it, dragging the monarchy with him. He reminded everyone of that Disney moment, that awkward secondhand embarrassment moment where Prince Harry at a movie premiere asked the CEO of Disney to hook his wife up with voiceover work, networking for cartoon voices at royal events. Centuries of power reduced used to hustle culture, from empire building to auditioning, from political marriages to baby, do the thing. The downgrade wasn't subtle, and audiences laughed because it was uncomfortable and true at the same time. Jimmy Kimmel didn't hold back either. He pointed out how strange it was that racism was cited as the reason for leaving the UK by people who moved to America of all places. He highlighted how carefully the narrative was packaged to make their exit look noble instead of selfish. Harry wanted respect. What he got was parody. His record-breaking memoir didn't earn reverence, it became a punchline. Even the title itself got turned into jokes on network television. When your life story becomes late-night comedy fodder, you've already lost control of the narrative. Then Conan O'Brien stepped in and pushed things into territory that was so uncomfortable you couldn't look away. Wax figures, storage jokes, lines delivered with just enough awkwardness to make the audience laugh and cringe at the same time. It crossed into weirdness, but somehow it worked, because by that point, nothing was off limits anymore. Once late night makes you a recurring punchline, recovery becomes almost impossible. But that wasn't even the peak. That was just the warm-up. Saturday Night Live went nuclear. Weekend Update didn't just joke about Harry and Meghan, it turned them into permanent fixtures, not one-off gags, ongoing characters, negotiating them away in trade deals, jokes about nobody wanting them anymore. The implication was brutal. Their reputations had sunk so low that even their own country wouldn't claim them. Weekend Update didn't stop there. They mocked the life choices, the sacrifice of everything for someone whose acting career was, at best, modest. They turned Meghan's past role into a sitcom premise. They stripped the royal fantasy down to its bare bones. Snell had been roasting them since the wedding day. From the very beginning, they framed it as what it really was underneath all the pomp: an unemployed man living with his grandmother getting married. And audiences laughed because the exaggeration still felt close enough to the truth. The contradictions kept stacking up. Privacy tours with non-stop interviews, victim narratives from California estates, complaining about attention while monetizing every detail of their lives. Network television has limits, but stand-up comedians don't. Chris Rock said what everyone else was thinking, out loud, unfiltered. Marrying into one of the most historically problematic families on earth and acting shocked afterward didn't make sense. The history isn't hidden, it's documented, public, obvious. Pretending ignorance felt dishonest. He pointed out how normal curiosity about a baby's appearance was twisted into something darker, how context was stripped away to build a narrative. And the audience roared because it finally felt like someone was saying the quiet part loudly. Bill Maher piled on, calling out the hypocrisy, complaining about attention while writing books, doing tours, and demanding coverage, playing the victim while living in extreme privilege. The lack of self-awareness was staggering. Andrew Schultz made it clear how little American audiences cared about royal drama at all. He reminded everyone that America literally fought a war to stop caring about royals. This wasn't their story. This wasn't their problem. Jimmy Carr brought the British perspective, comparing the royals to the Kardashians. Fame, scandal, and spectacle. Past mistakes that never go away. Costumes that haunt rebrands. Expecting public money while living abroad rubbed taxpayers the wrong way. The entitlement was impossible to ignore. Then Joe Rogan entered the picture, waking up one morning to find Prince Harry criticizing him on television, dragging him into a conversation he never asked to be part of. Then Rogan shrugged it off, pointing out the obvious: if you're taking medical advice from a podcaster, that's not the podcaster's fault. His audience didn't buy royal victim narratives. Picking that fight only amplified the mockery. Tim Dillon was ruthless, describing Meghan's relationships as transactional, connections instead of friendships, advancement instead of loyalty. Godfrey echoed the same energy after watching her podcast appearances, calling out the performative busyness and fake overwhelm of extreme privilege. Simon Brodkin tried to be fair. He watched the entire Netflix documentary hoping to understand. He went neutral and somehow came out hating them even more. He pointed out how legitimate discussions about racism and misogyny were undermined by cringe branding, nicknames, and self-importance. How Harry's storytelling made even deeply controversial figures look better by comparison. The documentary promised truth. What it delivered was 6 hours of complaints, contradictions, and entitlement. Even viewers who sympathized at first found themselves exhausted by the end. John Oliver, usually careful and measured, summed it up plainly. They weren't going to change. Not because they didn't want to, but because they couldn't. That's when cartoons stepped in. South Park didn't hold back. They turned the worldwide privacy tour into a permanent meme, wanting to be normal while doing TV shows, magazines, and celebrity appearances, screaming about privacy while demanding demanding attention. When cartoons are mocking you, the cultural verdict has already been delivered. Spitting Image went even further, exaggerating the kindness branding, mocking the lifestyle guru act, turning flower arrangements and basic cooking into absurd spiritual performances. The power dynamics weren't subtle. The rage slipped through the cracks the moment someone dared to correct her. And then the videos disappeared. Lawsuits, legal pressure, silence. Comedy erased not because it was wrong, but because it was effective. That's where things stand now. When the entire comedy ecosystem turns against you, there's no safe platform left. Netflix deals wobble. Spotify walks away. Every appearance generates more mockery than support. The brand built on victimhood and royal proximity is collapsing because the audience isn't buying it anymore. The question isn't whether comedians will stop roasting Meghan. They won't. The real question is what happens next. What happens when Harry realizes he's tied to a sinking ship? When the punchlines outnumber the allies? When the laughter drowns out the sympathy? Meghan is already positioning herself for a future beyond him. Solo projects, separate appearances, rebranding attempts. The comedian saw through it years ago. Harry is just now catching up after watching the entire comedy world dismantle their image on live television, one brutal laugh at a time. And here's the part nobody likes to say out loud, but everyone is quietly watching unfold. When laughter replaces outrage, sympathy evaporates. People stop arguing with you. They stop defending you. They stop caring enough to even be angry. They just laugh, scroll, and move on. And that's the most dangerous place any public figure can land, because outrage still means relevance. Mockery means you've lost control. Every joke, every parody, every late night punchline chips away at the carefully constructed image Meghan tried to build. The serious humanitarian, the misunderstood outsider, the modern royal breaking toxic traditions. That version of the story can't survive when comedians keep dragging the contradictions into the spotlight and audiences keep nodding along thinking, yeah, that actually sounds right. The problem is that comedy doesn't need proof the way journalism does. It only needs recognition, and people recognize the patterns immediately. Say you want privacy, then sign another deal. Say you hate attention, then call the paparazzi. Say you're done with the royal family, then monetize the royal family for years. The jokes don't exaggerate much, because reality already did most of the work. And once comedians across different cultures start making the same points independently, it stops feeling like bias and starts feeling like consensus. American comics don't care about monarchy. British comics don't respect entitlement. Podcasts don't answer to networks. Cartoons don't soften the message. The criticism comes from every angle, with different accents, different styles, different audiences, and somehow lands on the exact same conclusion. That's why this feels irreversible. You can rebrand after a scandal. You can recover from a bad interview. You can even survive a failed project. But when your entire public persona becomes a running joke, there's nowhere left to pivot. Any attempt at seriousness gets undercut by laughter. Any emotional appeal gets reframed as performance. Any complaint gets met with, here we go again, and Harry? He looks more uncomfortable by the day, less confident, less certain, like someone slowly realizing that stepping away from one machine didn't free him, he just walked into another one, louder and far less forgiving. One where there's no palace protocol to shield him, no institution to clean up the mess, and no loyal press corps to control the story. Meanwhile, Meghan keeps moving. New angles, new appearances, new attempts to reset the narrative. But the timing always feels off because the jokes are already out there waiting. Before she can explain herself, someone has already turned it into a punchline. That's the trap. Once comedy defines you, explanations don't land anymore. So now the real drama isn't about royal titles or family feuds. It's about what happens when the laughter never stops, when every platform becomes hostile territory, when even neutrality turns cold. Because in the court of public opinion, being hated is survivable. Being laughed at is almost never recoverable. Almost never recoverable. Almost never recoverable. Almost